Shutter Speed, episode 14. Have you ever noticed how cheap photography equipment is? I'm totally kidding with that. That's why it's so important, based on whatever budget you have, you buy the right gear. So today I'm talking about how to prioritize your budget towards getting the biggest bang out of the bucks you're spending in your photography equipment.
Do you love photography? Are you somebody that wants more out of your photography, to make money from your photography but don't know how to start? Welcome to Shutter Speed. Your host, Peter Spakowski, will guide you with tips, strategies, interviews, and know-how to start making money to pay for date night, new gear, or start a full-time career with your passion of photography. Let's get this show started. Here's your host, Peter Spakowski.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Shutter Speed. My name is Peter Spakowski, and I am your host. If you've been listening to this podcast for the past couple months, you've noticed I've been a little sporadic on the days that I release this podcast. I've been trying different days and seeing what works and what seems to be the best day to download this podcast. So based on statistics, based on the data, based on feedback from people, I'm going with the Tuesday release. No matter what day of the week I tend to release this podcast, Tuesdays seem to be the best day to download episodes. And when I release this podcast on Tuesdays, I get such better downloads for that day. I get such better downloads for each episode. So I'm sticking with Tuesday. This podcast is being recorded way back in the middle of June. So it's not being released until the end of July. So a lot goes on from the time that I record these episodes to the time that they're released. But right now, 2MM Academy is growing. The downloads are increasing. Thank you for that. As I've always said, this is a podcast about taking your hobby, your love of photography, from hobby to income. Even if it's just enough to pay for date night or to buy new gear. And today we're talking about buying gear, and gear can be expensive. I have a lot of experience spending a lot of money on photography equipment that I hate, that just don't do any good, that doesn't help me in my photography business. So today I'm talking about how I prioritize and how I suggest new people taking their career from hobby to income and where to spend money properly. But this is a free podcast. The only thing that I do ask is that you share it with somebody. Share it with one or more individuals that would benefit from this podcast. There's a lot of people that love photography as a hobby, and this podcast is around any type of photographer. Whether you're a hobbyist or you want to start generating income, it's important to spend money on the photography equipment that's really going to help your photography improve. That's going to be the base of your photography equipment. That's going to become what's in the bag, what's in your photography bag, what's in your toolbox for your photography. So today I'm talking about how do you prioritize money? Photography equipment's very expensive. The biggest area I've spent money that I've wasted is on stands. I've never really wasted money on lenses because even when I bought a lens and I didn't like it, I was able to sell it. When I bought a stand that I didn't like, it's often hard to sell a stand for anything close to what you spend on it. And often you give it away. Or I have a closet full of stands. They come in useful from time to time. Same with lighting. Lighting is very expensive, and you want to buy the right light, and you want to put the money into the lighting that's going to most benefit your photography. So today we're talking about how to prioritize money, where you should start. This is a podcast for any budget. And what I'm going to do is work in order of importance. The things I'm talking about first is where you should spend money on. If you want this in a PDF format, I'm changing the download for 2MM Academy on where do you prioritize your finances for photography. If you go out to 2mmacademy.com and sign up for my email list, you'll get the cheat sheet on where to spend money as well as links to the products that I talk about in this podcast, as well as the products that I've purchased and where do you buy it from for the most affordable price. I do a lot of research before I buy anything. I go to YouTube, do research on the equipment. I go to review blogs and review equipment. I talk to other photographers about the equipment. So I've done a lot of research, and I'm saving you time by doing that, by providing you the information in this podcast, as well as providing you the information in that PDF. But if you go out to 2MM Academy, you'll get this PDF if you subscribe to the email list, as well as my tips and tools on how to start generating income by the weekend in your photography. So go out there, sign up for that, subscribe to this podcast. You're not going to want to miss a single episode. It's beneficial for anybody that just wants to remain as a hobbyist in photography. But if you really want to start generating income from your photography, this is a great podcast. Maybe after listening to this episode, you realize there's some equipment that you want to buy. Use these strategies to go out and start making income so you can purchase this equipment. It's important not to go into debt when you buy photography equipment. Generate income, generate some money. I used to pay for college books by going out and painting decks. And what started that is there was one time I had classes in college and the books for one semester was $700. So what did I do? I went out and painted 2 decks. It took me 3 days and it paid for my books. I didn't go into debt. I was able to purchase my books and people had some nice looking decks. Same thing with photography. Maybe there's some lights that you want to buy. Maybe there's a new lens. There's always a new lens, right? Especially now, so many people are wanting new lenses because of the advancements in the mirrorless technology. So go ahead, invite somebody to listen to this podcast, subscribe. You won't want to miss a single episode. So it doesn't matter if you have $500 for a budget or $20,000. Trust me, $20,000 in photography equipment can go really quick. You could buy basically 3 pieces of gear and blow through $20,000. Or if you plan it right, you could buy 50 pieces of equipment for $20,000. But $20,000, I realize most people don't have. Most people have between $500 to $3,000 to start their photography business. Even if you just can put $1,000 in your photography business, you can improve your photography game substantially. So let's get started on that. Where do you prioritize your money when you have a certain budget for photography? Even if you have an unlimited budget in photography, you don't want to waste money on gear that you're not going to like. And trust me, I'll highlight in here on where I spent money on gear and it was a waste of money that I could have used someplace else to improve my photography game. So let's get started. So the most important area to spend your money when it comes to photography is the body. You want to be very selective in the style of body that you're going to use. If all you have is $1,000 or maybe $1,200, there's 2 options for you. First, believe it or not, I'm going to suggest the iPhone 12 Pro Max. If you want to know the reasons why in more detail, go listen to episode 5 of this podcast. You can make money with this iPhone. It's incredible. But if you really want to become a photographer and advance your photography, again, it depends on the budget that you have. If that's all you have, and then you want to start generating money to buy more camera gear, do that. But the body is the most important thing you're going to buy. And you're going to have to make a decision. And that decision is, what brand do you want to go with? Do you want to go with Canon, Sony, Nikon, or others? Do some research. I'm a Canon guy. I've always shot Canon. My sister shoots Nikon. Other people that I know shoot Sony, and they all love it. They love the camera that they bought. And I've known people too that have eventually switched, But think about it. The lenses that you buy are only compatible with that body. So if you decide to switch down the road, you're going to have to sell your lenses and purchase all new lenses. It can be very costly to switch brands. So do some research. But I'm a Canon shooter. I'm going to be talking about Canon. You can also just buy the equivalent for Nikon or Sony. So the body is important. And if you only have a certain budget, say if you only have $750, you can buy the Canon Rebel SL3. It's fairly new. It's great technology. I started off with a Sony CyberShot, and then I upgraded to a Canon Rebel many years ago. In fact, that camera is still useful today. My daughter uses it, so it's a great camera, but you need to choose what you want to go with. So if you only have $750, I suggest the Canon Rebel SL3. But then if you want to start getting into those professional bodies, if you want to start looking at professional bodies of cameras that you're going to use that will maybe stay with you for a dozen years, 12 years, that's what you got to think. A camera body that you buy, it's going to be good for 12 to 15 years, depending on, new technology coming out, what your interests are, what areas that you want to focus on your photography. But the next one up that I would suggest is the Canon Eos Rp. It's a mirrorless camera, and it's an entry mirrorless camera that Sony has produced. It competes with the Rebel, their own product, but it gives people a way to get into mirrorless. And that's going to cost you about $1,000, and it's the body only. So the difference between the Rebel is you can get a nice lens and body for $750. With these mirrorless professional bodies that I'm going to talk about, you're going to have to start figuring out what lenses that you want. So I have the EOS R. I love it. I had it about 2 months after it came out. It replaced my Canon 5D Mark IV, which is also a great camera. If somebody wants to look at that, you can buy these used. Also, if you go to B&H Photo, B&H is a photography store in New York, Manhattan, but you can buy some really great used gear and they certify it. My son bought his body from B&H and he bought it used, and it's a great camera body. But I use the Canon EOS R, and that's about $1,800 for just the body. If you want the top of the line mirrorless, which Canon just released not too long ago, it's the EOS R5, and that sucker is going to cost you about $4,000. So you can see it's all different price entry points into the camera body, into the professional camera body business. But you can spend anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000 just on a professional body. The other thing I don't really like about the Canon Rebel is it has an attached flash. And I don't ever use attached flash, let alone one that's built into the camera. It doesn't produce enough light. It doesn't produce light that's nice. It really blows out and highlights areas of the person that really aren't very flattering for the person. So I would suggest, if your budget is limited, either look at that iPhone or look at the EOS Rp. It's a nice camera body. If you can spend a little bit more money, I highly recommend the EOS R. It's a great camera. So the next area that you will spend money on are lenses. Not just what lens, but there's so many out there with different focal points, right? And different f-stops. What is the right lenses to have? So I'm going to talk about, if you only buy one lens, what is the lens that you should buy? If you're going to buy two lenses, what's the next lens? Whatever your budget is for lenses, where you keep going, maybe it's a lens that you buy two lenses to start with, even one lens to start with. The one lens I'm going to recommend, it's awesome. It's my favorite lens in my bag. But even if 2 years goes by and you have a collection of three lenses, what should be the fourth lens that you should buy that's the most versatile for your photography hobby or business. And the first one is the 50 millimeter. I have a Sigma 50 millimeter. The thing is awesome. It is tack sharp. It produces some of the most eye-popping pictures that I've ever seen. It is just phenomenal. And it doesn't matter which environment. You can be in a small room. You can be outside. You can be doing street photography. You can be doing portraits in a studio. It produces amazing images. The money is in the glass. What makes the pictures pop? What makes the pictures more tack sharp? It's in the glass of the lenses. So first, the camera body, because you need a camera body to take pictures. But the most important area you're going to spend money in photography is the lenses. And I would highly, highly recommend you make the Sigma 50 millimeter your very first lens that you own. And maybe you already have a dozen different lenses in your bag. If you don't have the 50 millimeter Sigma, get it. You will love it. It's affordable. The f-stop is amazing. It goes down to 1.4 and it gives you some incredible pictures. I can't say enough about this lens. I absolutely love it. So that 50 millimeter will get you some nice pictures close up. So now let's talk about distance photography, or maybe something that's just a little bit further, or you want to have the option of zooming in and out. I suggest for number 2, your second lens, that you purchase a 70 to 200. Whatever f-stop you can afford, buy it. Whether you can afford a 2.3, or maybe you can't, maybe you have to get a variable that's bigger. The price range on this lens is ridiculous. It can go from $600 to $3,000 just based on the f-stop. But if you get a 70 to 200 in your camera bag, you can do headshots, you can do portraits, you can do landscape, you can do travel, but also just beware. The lower the f-stop that you get, the heavier the lens. You don't want to be carrying a 2.3 out when you're doing travel photography. That sucker will get heavy no matter what strap or waist support that you have the carrier camera. It will get heavy, just so you know, and often you want to use it with a tripod. So think about it. Think about what f-stop you want to use. I bought the lowest f-stop I could at that range because I was doing low light photography. I was taking pictures of bodybuilders in a low lit theater on stage with a spotlight from a distance away. So I needed something that was not going to blur when people moved, that I could get a low enough f-stop that would get me the look that I want. But the 70 to 200 is a great lens, and that's what I recommend for number 2. Number 3 is probably the most versatile lens that you can have in your bag, and that's a 24 to 105. 24 to 105, you can shoot portraits, you can shoot headshots, you can shoot travel. You can keep that lens on your camera and it's not heavy, and you can carry it around all day and you won't miss a shot. That is my favorite lens to have in my bag when I travel. I also love to have that lens on my camera when I'm just walking around. It's not heavy. It will allow me to capture a shot whenever I need it. It allows me to shoot headshots in a studio. It's the most versatile lens, so it covers a wide range, and it gets you that range in between that 50 and the difference between the 70 to 200. So it gets you right in the middle of that range. It covers that 50 millimeter. Now, that 50 millimeter is a prime lens, so it's made for that focal point. It's made to shoot things at 50 millimeter. That's why it's optimized for that 50 millimeter. A lens like a 70 to 200, a 24 to 105, they all have their sweet spot. And you need to figure out what that sweet spot is when you get those lenses. But the 24 to 105 will help fill in the gaps between the first two lenses. The fourth lens, this is where you want to start specializing in a niche in your photography. You need to have the proper lens for the type of photography that you shoot. So this is where you've spent a decent amount of money on lenses, but you want to get more specialized. And again, once you get to that 24 to 105, I highly suggest you go through the other equipment that I'm going to suggest through steps 3 and 7 before you buy another lens. You want to start improving your gear, improving your camera bag. Now that you have those 3 lenses in your camera bag, it's time to move on to the next categories. You don't need to keep buying lenses. But the next lens, you really need to focus on what is your area of specialty, your niche. I shoot headshots. So for headshots, I'm going to recommend an 85 millimeter prime lens. It gets you the right distance away from your client where you still have that connection, where you're not so far away shooting them. You're able to get up close and get that engagement with them. And the 85 millimeter, really, it's stunning when you take a picture of that person, when you take a headshot of that person. If you're doing landscape or animal photography, this one's going to sound weird, but landscape or animal photography, I suggest the 11 to 24. I went to a workshop with Kaylee Greer. That's the lens that she uses for her dog photography. I have shot several dogs, including my own, at 12 millimeter, and the pictures are phenomenal. It is so interesting. It brings out the character of the dog. It brings out the character of the animals. But that is a great one if you want to either shoot landscape, so you can go out and shoot really, really wide. Even if you want to shoot fisheye, that gives you a really unique look. That 11 to 24 is a great lens. While the 11 to 24 is a great landscape lens, I also suggest the 28 to 300 by Tamron. Sigma makes it, also Canon makes it, Nikon, Sony. The nice thing about Tamron and Sigma is they make lenses compatible across multiple different camera body manufacturers. It's only compatible with the type that you buy, but they're affordable. Sigma and Tamron is upping their game. I'm buying more of their lenses. I love the 28 to 300 when I'm traveling or doing landscape photography, because I can get really close or I can zoom in really tight, and it allows me to see things. And it's a light lens, but it allows me to see things closer up than that 70 to 200. Plus, it saves on my shoulder carrying around this camera gear all day. So it's very light. The mirrorless camera bodies are very light. The combination is phenomenal. The pictures are phenomenal. You get some really sharp pictures with this Tamron lens. I've had it for years, but I love it for landscape or travel photography. Again, it's only after you have the right gear in the other categories that you would go back and buy these lenses. If you want to be the most economical, if you want to be the most strategic in how you spend your budget on your photography gear. The next category is tripods and ball heads. This is another important category. You need to spend money in this area. You're not going to get away with something cheap. The thing is you want to have a tripod that's heavy, not super heavy, one that's okay to travel around and carry around, but the heavier the tripod, the better. And the reason being is if you use a tripod outside and it's windy, a light tripod, you will pick up movement and you will get a blurry picture. So don't waste your money here. I've bought the $25 tripod. I've bought the $100 tripod. I did not get a good tripod until I'm spending over $300. And the reason being is I need stability. I need stability in the tripod. I need something that's weak. It's not going to get blown over in the wind. I want something to sit there where I don't have to hold on to it. That defeats the purpose depending on what types of photography you're doing. If you're doing nighttime photography where you're doing long exposure, the slightest wind will cause that picture to be blurred. If you're doing an exposure for 15 seconds and it gets windy, you're going to notice it. If you have a heavy enough tripod and take a 15-second exposure, it's not going to move. It's going to be tack sharp. But I like Manfrotto tripods. I really like them. I've got multiple different ones from travel. My travel tripods are a little bit lighter, but they're heavy enough that they're not going to blow in the wind. My studio one is very heavy because I don't have to transport it around and it stays stable. But the next important thing on the tripod is what type of ball head are you going to have? You need to have a good tripod ball head. You don't want one that just goes up and down, left and right. You need to have the ball socket ball head for your tripod. I suggest Arca Swiss. That's the one I use. Manfrotto makes some really good ball heads. If you want to be more economical, Oben has some really good tripod ball heads that are ball heads and not just move left and right, but they swivel. They swivel on a ball so you can get all different kinds of angles. But you're going to want to spend money here. This is one that you get what you pay for. You don't want cheap tripods. You don't want cheap ball heads. You want something that's going to last a lifetime. Honestly, you're going to spend money here, so make it last, because whatever tripod you buy, it's going to last for life. I've never had a tripod break unless I've fallen on it or I caused damage to it somehow. If you take care of your tripod and your ball head, it's going to last for life. So spend the money here. It's money well spent. You don't want to waste money that's going to cause you to spend more money later. A $400 tripod might cost you $700 later because you bought a cheaper one that you're replacing. The next category is software. What software are you going to purchase to maintain your pictures? You're going to want to buy Photoshop. You're going to want to edit pictures, and Photoshop is the place to be. It's the one I like. There's many competitors out there, and I just don't like them. I've tried them all, and at the end of the day, I always come back to Photoshop. Photoshop, you can improve the color. You can take things out and delete it. You can lens correct. There's so many things that you can do. That's Adobe Photoshop. That's where you're going to want to spend money. I have this at number 4. Honestly, you're going to spend this anywhere. You can put this in category 3 before you buy a tripod, depending on the type of photography you want. But the software is where I would start spending money after you bought a body, after you bought a lens. And if you buy it before or after a tripod, great. It's no big deal. You're probably going to buy those 4 categories all at the same time anyways. But Photoshop is a great software package to improve the quality of your pictures. Now, there's a big debate. What picture organizing software are you going to use? I did a podcast back in episode 7 where I get into the details of Lightroom and Capture One. You're going to want to spend money on one of those. A benefit that I see, because Photoshop is something that you're going to need, for $10 a month with Adobe, you get Photoshop and Lightroom. Can't beat that deal. That is the cheapest option out there. Yes, it's a reoccurring cost every single month, but you get every single update. If there's an upgrade to a new version, you automatically get that. It's phenomenal. You also get an online portfolio. It's something I failed to mention in episode 7, but you can build a professional website based on Adobe platform just by signing up and getting Lightroom and Photoshop. I like Lightroom and Capture One. I like them both the same. There's reasons I chose Lightroom, but go back and listen to episode 7 if you're interested in hearing about that. The next area that I spend money on software, and again, this doesn't have to be in this order. I suggest going to the next categories before you buy something like this. But you need to have something to give your pictures a unique look. Not so much headshots, but when I start getting into portraits or I start getting into landscapes, I want to do some cool effects. I want to bring out some cool natural beauty. Topaz Labs is a company that offers some really cool software to really make your pictures pop. So I suggest Topaz Labs for one. The other company that has some really cool picture editing software is Luminar. Luminar is really cool and it integrates really cool with Photoshop and Lightroom. But Luminar, they have some really cool effects from taking things and making it monochrome, black and white. Sky replacement in Luminar is phenomenal. Same thing with Topaz Labs. If you want to replace skies and give some skies some really cool looks, you get some stock skies, but you can also purchase some stock skies from Adobe Stock very cheap. That's one of the areas that I take pictures of skies and I put them out there on Adobe Stock to sell. But the sky replacement is really cool. There's some really cool special effects. One thing that I purchased that I haven't played with yet is Boris. I got a special deal through Kelby One on Boris effects. Those are adding things like lightning strikes into your pictures, adding special effects into your pictures that Topaz Labs or Luminar doesn't have. Luminar and Topaz Labs are very close. They're competitors with each other. I like both of them. I use both of them for different types of styles or different types of looks, but it gives your portraits a special, unique look. It gives your portraits something that really pops, that causes you to be more niche. But Luminar and Topaz Labs, those are two software packages that I suggest if you want to start getting into making your pictures pop, giving your pictures certain looks. You can download free trials, so go out there and check those out. The next area, and this is probably the most expensive area or most affordable area that you'll improve your photography. But if you spend some money in lighting, you can really take your pictures to the next level. You can really attract clients like you never believed. It's great to go out and do natural lighting. I suggest to do that. But even if you go out and shoot natural light, if you bring a flash to add some fill or just make the subject pop a little bit more, lighting is a great area to spend some money on. And I've completely changed the way and the areas I spend money in lighting just a few months ago. And that's because Westcott came out with the FJ200. This flash is phenomenal. It is so good. It is my favorite piece of lighting equipment. And it is my favorite piece of lighting equipment just because it's so small, it's portable. You can take it with you when you go on vacation. You can put it on a light stand and get incredible lighting. And it's only $600. You can get it cheaper than that. But if you buy the FJ600 with the modifiers, it'll run you about $600. It'll get you an extra battery. It'll get you an extra charger. It'll get you a few different modifiers. It is phenomenal. It is my favorite flash that I have. So the FJ600, I suggest people go and get that one. Even if all you do is shoot pictures of family get-togethers, you can set this thing up in the room on a tripod and you get incredible lighting. But lighting, you can waste so much money so fast. The next type of lighting that I suggest that you purchase is studio lighting. Studio lighting, you're going to need to decide, are you going to be a flash photographer or are you going to be a continuous lighting photographer? I do both. For my portrait work, I use more of flash photography. For headshot work, I use continuous lighting all day long. We'll never go away from continuous lighting. It just produces the best looking pictures and headshots. And the reason being is continuous lighting dilates the pupil. So you bring out the natural beauty, the natural color of the person's light. Depending on flash, you can almost get no iris color at all. In the headshot, it can be all pupil. I've seen that where people's pupils are bigger than anything in their eye. And a lot of that is if you're using flash or continuous lighting. If you see a person's eye where the pupil's dilated, very small, most likely that person's using continuous lighting. So it just depends on the type of look that you want to get out of your subject. But studio lighting, for continuous lighting, I recommend the Westcott Flex Kit. It's going to run you some money. It's well more than that $600 range that the FJ200 runs, but you can spend between $5,000 to $9,000 on Westcott lighting for the Flex Kit. And I use the Peter Hurley Flex Kit. It's phenomenal. It's the best lighting out there for headshots, hands down, without a doubt. I love that kit so much. The fall off on the lighting is so spectacular. It lights the subject just so spectacular. So I really recommend the Westcott Flex Kit for continuous lighting. For flash photography, I like the Pro Photos, but again, you're going to talk about some money, spending some money on lighting if you go and purchase Pro Photo. Godox, much more affordable, not as durable. The light's still nice. I mean, if you took the common person and put them and had them pick out the Pro Photo or the Godox lighting, they're not going to be able to do it. And again, it all depends on the photographer. It all depends on the settings that you use in your camera body. But I do prefer Pro Photo, but the Godox flashes are great too. You can also purchase multiple FJ600s or FJ200s. The FJ200 flash from Westcott and use those in your studio. The FJ200s are phenomenal. The next area that you're going to want to spend money on are stands. And like I said at the beginning of this podcast, this is where I've just blown money. And a stand's going to cost you anywhere from $50 to $300, depending on what you want. You might as well spend a little bit extra money because it's going to save you money down the road. And by that, if you put a $5,000 flash on a $50 stand and it blows over and you blow that bulb's going to cost you $300 to replace anyways. So you're going to want to protect your gear. And the best way to do that is buying some sturdy, solid stands. I love my Impact stands. Impact's going to cost you less than Manfrotto and other competitors. So I highly recommend checking out Impact. Impact makes some great affordable gear and mostly in the stands. The stands that I purchased from Impact that I absolutely love are the turtle stands. They're solid. They're heavy. They're not ones you're going to want to take and carry around outdoors. You can get a cheaper Impact stand for $50 that if maybe you put the FJ200 on, take it out there, you might want to carry around a weight just so it doesn't blow over in the wind. But you can buy affordable stands if you're doing outdoor senior pictures, outdoor wedding pictures. You're not going to want to carry these turtle stands around. They're more made for in the studio, but they're solid. And the sizes range from anywhere from 3 feet to 10 feet in the air. So you can have all kinds of different heights on your flashes or using the stands for whatever you need, setting up modifiers, setting up backdrops, whatever you need. But Impacts are great. One that I absolutely love is the Impact Lowboy. It has wheels, and this thing goes below 3 feet. And you can wheel it around, and it goes up to 4 feet. So you can put a flash on it. You can put a Flex Kit light on it, and you can wheel it around. You can get different angles. It's heavy. It's sturdy. If somebody bumps into it, it's not going to tip over. If the wind blows, it's not going to tip over. You can take this one on location with you. It's a little bit heavier, but it is super solid. It is so durable, and it's the most versatile stand that I have in my studio because I can wheel it around and take pictures all over the place, and I can move from one location to another or just modify or just move it 2 inches very easily by tapping it. But it is an Impact Lowboy. The last area you're going to want to start spending money on is to give your pictures a unique look. So if you buy the FJ200, the Pro Photo, any type of flash, I'm going to recommend the first modifier that you buy is the Impact 700 or the Impact 7-foot umbrella. This thing's only $60. A lot of modifiers, a lot of umbrellas that are that big will cost you $300 or $400. Impact sells it for $60. You can buy a beauty dish cover for it for like $20. It is great. It produces beautiful light. A lot of my portrait work is just one light, and I use a 7-foot umbrella. I use a 7-foot umbrella with the beauty dish cover on it, and it produces some really sharp pictures that are well lit. You have to put it up high, angle it at 45 degrees down at the subject. It's phenomenal. So that one is affordable. Then buy the Impact 24-inch. Buy a 24-inch. It's more focused. Maybe you're just doing a head portrait and you want the person's face to be the area that people's eyes go to. The drop off the body is very beautiful, but yet their face is lit very nice. There's other modifiers that you can buy. There's different gel kits to produce different colors. Those are all different areas. Barn doors. Barn doors are great. One of my favorite modifiers to use. But modifiers is the last area that you're really going to spend money. You can buy diffusers. It's just unbelievable the amount of different modifiers, but you can get some really cool different looks. So that's the podcast today. That's where I suggest people spend their money depending on what budget they have. No matter what budget you have for your photography, this podcast produced and provided you all the areas to spend your money in. Money that is going to impact you where you're not wasting money, that you're getting gear that will help in your photography hobby or business. It's helping you take your photography to the next level. Again, if you want this all in PDF form, I have it laid out. Go out to 2mmacademy.com, sign up for my email list. It will be one of the downloads that you get from me on where to spend money in your photography. Doesn't matter if it's your hobby or your business. You always want to be the most economical. You want to be the most strategic in the way that you spend your money. And this was a good layout. It's what I use. It's what I recommend. It's what I wish I knew before I went out and wasted so much money on gear that I don't like or I don't use or that I had to take time to sell to get some of that money back. Again, this is a free podcast. All I'm asking for you to do is to send this to one person that will truly benefit from listening to this podcast. Send it to one person that it will help them take their hobby to income or just improve their hobby of photography. Until next time, go out there, have a great time, practice shooting, get in touch with me. Go out to 2MM Academy if you have a question for this podcast and be happy to answer it for you. Until next time, take care, get out there and practice.
Thank you for listening today. We would love to hear from you and would love you to engage with the community. For more tools, tips, and know-how, head over to the 2mm Academy at 2mmstudio.com and join us.